Hello everyone and welcome back to Carvenus 14. Now today we are going to be doing a guide for Arlecchino because as you all have known in today's live stream or maybe yesterday's live stream or the day before yesterday's live stream depending on when I actually get to upload this video, Arlecchino was officially confirmed to be in the rerun Arlecchino was officially confirmed to be the rerun character for the next patch that's coming out in about a week and a half now. So, yeah, or depending on which day I released it. But the main thing is, guys, that Arlecchino is coming out again, and the last time she had her banner was when she was released in 4.6, so it has been a while, and some things have actually changed. Kind of. So, today we are going to go over Arlecchino and, well, everything about her, basically. Her kit, her best weapons, her best artifacts, her constellations, her teammates, her playstyle, even some tips and tricks. But I won't be showing all of that in this video, because if we were here, I would be here explaining for like at least a few hours, and I don't really want to be doing that. Because number one, I'll kill my voice, and number two, I'm pretty sure the rest of you have better things to do than to listen to me all day. So, I will split this this guide series into a few different videos. This first video is just going to be a general guide of Arlecchino, like, you know, how everyone else does their guide, basically. Then the videos after that are going to be, like, a dedicated artifacts video, because there are some artifacts that actually do work with Arlecchino quite surprisingly well, and some artifacts that might seem great but not so much, and I'll go more in depth there. Then as for her weapons, well, I don't believe her weapons really need a separate video, because her weapons are pretty straightforward, to be honest, so there's not really much to explain there. But her teams, there are a few teams that she can actually run, and some very interesting team comps that some of you might not have thought about. So yeah, there's that. And then, of course, there's also a tips and tricks video that I kind of want to do, because Arlecchino does actually have some hidden technology within her playstyle and kit that some of you may not know about. So, yeah. And also, I want to do a comparison video between Arlecchino's C1 as well as her weapon. Now, I already, unfortunately, have her C1, so I can't exactly unselect it, or deselect, I should say, to do an actual damage comparison, but from my own experience, that's what I'm going to be talking it through. So, yeah, but that will basically be it, guys. So, let's start off with Arlecchino and what makes her basically Arlecchino. Now, Arlecchino, for those of you that have joined after patch 4.6, Arlecchino is a Pyro DPS. Now, she is actually classed as a hyper carry by a lot of people in the community. In fact, I honestly do think that she is a hyper carry. Like, some people, like, it's pretty obvious with how much damage she does. She is a hyper carry. Even without her teammates, her base kit effectively has such insane scalings on, well, her normal attacks and her main damage, well, which is her main damaging tool, to be considered a hyper carry. So, she is a hyper carry. She is Pyro, and she is a 5-star. She's also a polearm user as well, and she's also the 4th Harbinger of the Fatui. So, yeah, but anyway, guys, on with the video. So what does Arlecchino exactly do? Well, she is a normal attacking damage unit, right? She's a damage dealer that deals most, if not all, of her damage through her normal attacks. Now, why are her normal attacks so insane? Well, as you guys can see, there's nothing really that special, right? You have the normal attack, charge attack, plunging attack, but there's also this paragraph here talking about the Mask of Red Death. Now, the Mask of Red Death, guys, is basically Arlecchino's Pyro Infusion mechanic. So, after you do your elemental skill, there will appear a mark on opponents. You wait for 5 seconds, and then you will do a charge attack, which absorbs the mark and grants Arlecchino a mechanic known as Bond of Life. Now, Bond of Life is effectively what Arlecchino uses to deal her damage. Now, Arlecchino's Mask of Red Death multiplier is actually multiplied by these by the base hit damage multipliers here. So it'd be 288 multiplied by 113 for the first attack. That's how it would be, right? And because of that, Arlecchino's normal attack scalings are actually the highest in the game as of right now. With Mask of Red Death equipped, right, or activated, she will have the highest normal attack multiplier in the game, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, which is absolutely insane, because that title normally would go to Claymore characters. But Arlecchino hits harder than Claymore characters, and faster, right? Yeah, and she's, in my opinion, a lot nicer to play. Like, she feels a lot better to play than Claymore units. That's actually why my history has always been polearm DPSs, right? Zhongli, Raiden Shogun, Shenhe, and also Arlecchino now. So, yeah, I've basically had polearm units since the very, very beginning of the game, and I've been playing since patch 1.0, right? Yeah. And I did actually use Zhang Ling as my main DPS for a certain time. So, yeah. But I've basically had polearm units my entire life when it comes to playing this game. Well, not my entire life. That sounds as though I'm sad. But ever since I've been playing this game, polearm units have been my favorite weapon type in the game. So yeah. Now, anyway, guys, more onto the specifics about this. So Arlecchino's Mask of Red Death state can only exist if she has more than 30% Bond of Life. Okay. Now, if Arlecchino goes above 30% Bond of Life, she will gain the Mask of Red Death state. However, if she falls below 30% Bond of Life, right, she won't actually have it anymore. Now, the way you can check this is actually through her meter. So I actually have exactly 30% Bond of Life, and that is exactly 30%. I know because I actually just checked, right? Literally a few seconds starting this video. So, yeah, Arlecchino does actually... That is 30% of Arlecchino's Bond of Life right there. So whenever your health bar gets to around that point, right, know that Arlecchino will run out of Bond of Life, and you need to probably use her elemental skill again, right?
What could the children be
now,
up to?
In order to really show you how it works, okay, I am actually going to go over to Masanori and basically show you how her normal attacks work. So, we're going to activate Zhongli's shield just so I don't take any damage and I don't interrupt myself or get flying back from just standing still. So, yeah. But effectively, guys, the way it works is you do Arlecchino's elemental skill, you wait about 5 seconds, well, until this version of the mark. Now, this version is already here for me because I have C2, well, I have C3 Arlecchino, so yeah, but we'll talk more about that in the constellation section, right? Then you do a charged attack, absorb the mark, and now you can see Arlecchino's Bond of Life is insanely high. Right? Now, if you guys can see, every normal attack I do is actually absorbing the Bond of Life, right? Now, that's actually a part of the Bond of Life mechanic that actually happens, right? So, if you didn't know, Arlecchino actually does more damage depending on her Bond of Life. If she has high Bond of Life, she'll do more damage than when she has low Bond of Life. And Arlecchino's, what's it called? Her normal attack actually does consume about 7.5% of her current Bond of Life every 0.03 seconds. So every normal attack that she does, right, she will actually consume 7.5% of her Bond of Life, right? Now, that's actually pretty big. To be fair, it is current Bond of Life, which is important, because if it was max of Bond of Life, Arlecchino would be a very, very bad unit when it comes to longer team rotations, right? But because it's current, that does mean that the lower your amount of Bond of Life gets, the less Bond of Life that is actually taken, right? So yeah. But the thing is, guys, is that Arlecchino's Bond of Life, the higher it is, the more damage she does. Which is why a lot of people say that Arlecchino is a front-loaded unit. Meaning that most of her damage comes at the very beginning of her damage rotation, and towards the end, she'll actually start to lose damage, because very much that is true. Right? So, yeah. Now, another thing about Arlecchino's normal attacks when they are infused with Pyro, guys, I don't know if you did notice, but Arlecchino's normal attacks, when they are infused with Pyro, do actually reduce her elemental skill's cooldown. Because if you guys didn't know, Arlecchino's elemental skill actually has a 30-second cooldown, which is absolutely insane, right? Basically, basically another child, effectively. Like, you know, you guys remember back in the day when Tartaglia was popular and his elemental skill had like a 45-second cooldown if you use the max duration. that was painful, especially in the Hydro domain. You Genshin babies probably won't understand what I'm talking about, but the old men and women out there that have been playing the game since the very dawn that this game launched, yeah, that was painful. But basically, guys, Arlecchino has a mechanic with her normal attacks that basically make it so that whenever she hits an opponent with her Pyro Infusion normal attack, right, she'll actually reduce the elemental skill cooldown by 0.8 seconds. Now, that doesn't seem like a lot, but trust me, it is. Because of how fast Arlecchino normal attacks, right, she can actually get the cooldown lowered, right, by 15 seconds. So in an actual combat environment, your cooldown isn't actually 30 seconds, it's actually 15 seconds, which is a lot more bearable, right? Yeah. And another thing, guys, is whenever Arlecchino consumes her Bond of Life in order to, you know, do damage, right, that's when the cooldown is lowered, right? So it's basically whenever Arlecchino consumes Bond of Life, the cooldown is lowered. That's basically how it works. So somehow, if Arlecchino's Bond of Life isn't actually being consumed, her elemental skill also won't lower the cooldown, which is actually not a bad thing, to be fair, if you think about it, yeah. But that's basically how it works, guys. So, short summary: Arlecchino, whenever Arlecchino consumes a blood debt dew, or a blood debt dew is what it's called. Whenever she consumes that mark, she will gain a Pyro Infusion and also gain Mask of Red Death, which increases your normal attack damage multipliers and also consumes 7.5% of your current Bond of Life every 0.3 seconds. And whenever you do consume Bond of Life, Arlecchino's elemental skill will be reduced by 0.8 seconds. The cooldown will be lowered, basically. Slow that bit down again if you guys don't properly understand, but that is effectively what Arlecchino's normal attacks are. Now, one very, very important note about Arlecchino's Mask of Red Death, guys. Mask of Red Death only increases her normal attack damage multipliers. It does not affect her charged attack or her plunging attack multipliers, right? Only her normal attacks, which is why normal attack damage is really what Arlecchino wants, rather than any other form of damage. So, yeah. Now, Arlecchino's elemental skill is effectively what allows her to get this Pyro Infusion, right? So her elemental skill, basically, she dashes forward to opponents, and anyone caught within the AoE of her Pyro Needles effectively gets this mark applied to them. Now, the mark is effectively a Blood Debt Directive. Now, this mark actually has two levels. There's the small level, which is just a basic X, right? And then there's level 2, or sorry, level 1 is effectively just a small X, right? And level 2 is a big X. Now, my Arlecchino is at C3, so because of that, you do get an upgrade to her mark applying tactic, right, with her C2, but we'll get more onto that into her Constellation section. So, yeah. But basically, guys, the 5-second rule with Arlecchino is you apply her elemental skill, then you do the rest of your rotation, then jump back onto Arlecchino, and when you do, you probably will have her level 2 mark available. You do a charge attack, she does, you know, she basically will gain her Mask of Red Death Pyro Infusion, and then you go to town, effectively. That's how it works. So, yeah. And of course, this Blood Debt Directive, believe it or not, does actually last 30 seconds onto the opponents, right? Yeah, it does actually last 30 seconds on the opponent, so for whatever reason, if you're playing physical Arlecchino, you can actually just do it for the memes, physical Arlecchino, but I wouldn't, honestly. Yeah. And as much of a physical advocate as I am with physical Zhongli and physical Shenhe, yeah, just don't. So, yeah. But, basically, guys, every 5 seconds, this skill will actually deal AoE pyro damage. Amazing. Some form of pyro application offline, right? Well, off-field, should I say. Yes and no. And the reason I say that is because if you guys didn't know, the scaling is absolutely ridiculous. Like, look at this, right? The spike damage, if you guys didn't know, is effectively when Arlecchino dashes forwards and the spikes come out. That's the spike damage, alright? The cleave damage is when Arlecchino does her charged attack to absorb the mark. That has the highest multiplier. I mean, it kind of has to. And the Blood Debt Directive is 57.2%. And that's at level 10. right? I know what you're thinking. Doesn't it get upgraded at level 13? Level 13 Arlecchino, like level 13 elemental skill on Arlecchino doesn't exist because her C5, sorry, her C3 and C5 buff her normal attacks and burst respectively. So yeah, her elemental skill is not getting any stronger than this. It is complete dog shit when it comes to doing damage. Yeah. But this skill's main form of damage is not actually through itself. It's through Arlecchino absorbing the mark and then dealing damage. That's the main utility. This ability only exists to give Arlecchino her damage, not do damage directly, basically. Yeah. Now, like I said, with Arlecchino's elemental skill, once again, the way it works is you apply Arlecchino's elemental skill at the very beginning of the rotation, go and do your support rotation after that, then after 5 seconds when you come back, Arlecchino's mark will be expanded to level 2, then you do Arlecchino's normal attacks and, her charge attack to absorb the mark, and then you go to town on absolutely everyone. So that's how it works, guys. Yeah. Now, of course, if you guys didn't know, Arlecchino does actually have scaling when it comes to her charged attack, effectively. Well, her Blood Debt Directive. If you guys can see down here, Arlecchino's Blood Debt Directive, or Blood Debt Due, I should say. Sorry, is it Blood Debt Directive? It is a directive. Okay, no. The Due actually gets her more HP, but the Directive gets her some HP as well. So, yes, you can actually absorb Arlecchino's mark at level 1, but the Bond of Life that you obtain from her level 1 is only 65% of her max HP, right? Or sorry, 65%? Yeah, 65, yeah, each directive absorbed grants her Bond of Life worth 65% of her max HP. So 65% of Arlecchino's HP is basically what the Bond of Life will translate to. However, that number is basically doubled once you get level 2. So at level 2, it's actually 130% of her max HP, which is a lot better, right? That's why everyone says wait 5 seconds, then get her level 2 mark rather than just doing her level 1. Yeah. Now, you can actually just do Arlecchino's elemental skill and get the mark straight away if you wanted to, but I would only really recommend that if you're going against 3 or 4 enemies, at least, right? Against a list like only 1 or 2, it's not really worth it, to be honest. You're better off waiting. But if you are in a mob fight situation and you've applied your mark onto at least 3 or 4 enemies, you can actually do Arlecchino's level 1. So you don't have to wait around, right? But generally, it's just preferable to wait for level 2. So, yeah. Now, life she can be granted through Blood Debt Directives within 35 seconds after using her elemental skill is 145% of her max HP. Okay, yeah. So, basically, guys, what that effectively means is Arlecchino's elemental skill can only grant her a maximum of 145% of her max HP. So if you have like 5 enemies applied with the level 1 Bond of Life, if you were to absorb all of that, you would only be able to get a maximum of 145%. Any more, she won't be able to make use of it, right? So that's why it's preferable to just wait for level 2, because yes, some of the Bond of Life is actually wasted, but it's more consistent with its Bond of Life application, right? Yeah, there's no RNG that you really have to worry about. It's going to overcap, and that's it. With the level 1, it will hit or miss, basically. So yeah. Now, 145% is the maximum that she can obtain with this elemental skill. This doesn't actually mean that that's the maximum Arlecchino can obtain, because Arlecchino can go above 145%. In fact, she can get her maximum 200%, right? The thing is that this is only through the elemental skill. So if Arlecchino's Blood Debt Directive, she can only grab a maximum of 145% through this elemental skill only. There are other sources like Arlecchino's signature weapon, which can give her more, right? But it's just through this elemental skill that gives her 145%. Now, once again, when Arlecchino uses her, she can use her elemental skill again, alright? Yeah. She can use her elemental skill again while she has Bond of Life. However, if you actually apply a Blood Debt Directive onto opponent again, while they already have the previous Blood Debt Directive, that one will be cleared and the new one will replace it. Yeah, I mean, it's never going to happen when you're playing the game, but it's there just in case you forget to use her charge attack for whatever reason. But, yeah. And that is basically Arlecchino's elemental skill, guys. So to sum it up, Arlecchino's elemental skill is basically used to obtain the Blood Debt Directive or Blood Debt Due mark in order to allow Arlecchino to deal a load of damage. That's basically all there is to it. The maximum bond of life she can get through this method is 145%, right? Yeah. That's basically it. That's all there is to it. So, yeah. Now, Arlecchino's elemental skill, elemental burst is absolutely insane in terms of aesthetics. It is very pleasing to the eye. Unfortunately, you're probably never going to be doing it because of one very big reason. Arlecchino's elemental burst, unfortunately, has a very long animation, number one. Number two, it does not do enough damage to compensate for the long animation, right? In fact, you are actually better off using Arlecchino's normal attacks all the time. Like, if you didn't know, shielding teams especially don't actually want Arlecchino to use her burst, because number one, there's no need to use her burst in a shielding team because you won't take any damage, and number two, you actually deal more damage with normal attacks because of how fast Arlecchino hits and how hard she hits as well. You're actually just better off using Arlecchino's normal attacks. Now, that's not to say don't use her elemental burst. You definitely do want to use her elemental burst, but only if you're getting low, right? Arlecchino's elemental burst is more of a panic button, I'm about to die, basically. So if I don't use this, I will be killed. And obviously, you can't deal damage if you're dead, right? So, yeah. Use Arlecchino's elemental burst, not within the rotation, honestly, because Arlecchino's elemental burst isn't really used in her rotation. Arlecchino's elemental burst is only used if you're about to die. Like, if you have like 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 HP left, and you have no other choice but to use her burst, use it, alright? So yeah, but what does Arlecchino's burst actually do? Well, I'm making it sound as though it's a revival skill. It basically is, to be honest. Now, Arlecchino's elemental burst actually works just like how Hu Tao's elemental burst does, where it basically just heals her. And yes, Arlecchino's burst does heal her, in fact. In fact, the healing is actually 150% of her bond of life at the time, right? Plus 150% of her attack. Now, if you guys didn't know, Arlecchino's burst has a very, very special mechanic where basically, if there are any blood debt directives or blood debt dues around Arlecchino at the time of using her burst, she will absorb all of that, she'll absorb all blood debt directives, right? Then, when she does her finger snap, which is her burst, basically, she'll effectively, you know the wind-up to it, right? So, she'll absorb all the blood debt due, okay, and blood debt directives. Then, when she snaps her fingers and deals the damage, that's when she heals, and all the blood bond of life will be cleared, right? So, I do actually have Arlecchino's burst ready, and I'm going to show you guys, alright? So, where there it is, okay. So yeah, the way it works, guys, is Arlecchino's elemental burst. Oh, right. Also, another thing about Arlecchino's elemental burst, before I do actually go on with it, right? Arlecchino's elemental burst actually does reset the cooldown of her elemental skill. I mean, it does say in the paragraph, but Arlecchino's elemental burst does reset her elemental skill cooldown. So no matter where it is, it will just reset it. So let's say you use her elemental skill, then her burst, and then her elemental skill again. Well, you can, basically. After you use her elemental burst, even if it's at 30 seconds, it will just reset it, basically. So you can use it again straight away. So yeah.
Every journey has its final
Shut up!
day.
Gather!
There we go. So yeah. Let's fight. So, effectively, guys, you do Arlecchino's elemental burst, okay? And you can see the mark applied onto Masanori, right? Now, if I do the burst, her bond of life will increase, alright? So watch this.
Everlasting as the
There,
moon.
you see? And now it's all gone. And now you can do her elemental skill again on to just deal more damage, go to town, eat some chicken noodles, fried rice, sushi, and even some crispy spaghetti. I don't know who would eat crispy spaghetti. Straight from the packet, I guess. But that's how you would basically want to use Arlecchino's elemental burst, right? It's effectively a panic button. Now, obviously, I wasn't in a situation to panic, but that is effectively what you would do, right? So yeah, as you guys can see there, the mechanics for Arlecchino's elemental burst is effectively, if there are any blood debt dues or blood debt directives around Arlecchino at the time, she will absorb all of them straight before she actually snaps her fingers. Once she snaps her fingers, she will use all of the, she will basically cleanse all the bond of life that she has in order to heal her, okay? The blood debt doesn't actually deal extra damage with the burst. It only is added on as extra healing, basically. That's all that is. Yeah. And that's basically Arlecchino's burst, guys. Nothing really that special about it. Now, Arlecchino's burst does actually get a lot stronger once you get to C6, okay? But before then, you don't really want to use Arlecchino's burst as a part of her rotation. Once you get to C6, it does actually become a lot more powerful, which is why you want to use it a part of her rotation. But if you actually do use it a part of your rotation, you're probably going to one-bang everything in sight. So I guess it's not really a rotation, it's just a massacre at that point. But you get what I'm saying, right, guys? So yeah. Basically, in order to sum up Arlecchino's burst, massive AoE, massive healing, scales off of Bond of Life, and also absorbs Bond of Life if they're a Blood Debt Directive or Due, if any are around. Once Elemental Burst has been used, resets Elemental Skill cooldown to go for the second round of damage. That's basically it. So, yeah. Effectively, normal attacks, big damage. Elemental Skill, way to unlock big damage. And Elemental Burst, healing, and resetting the way to get more damage. So, yeah, that's basically how Arlecchino's abilities can be dumbed down to in a single sentence. Now, Arlecchino's passives are pretty important, alright? So, Arlecchino's passive is effectively, well, her elemental skill this passive I basically already talked about, but basically what it says is, Arlecchino will be, Blood Debt Directives have the following characteristics. Arlecchino will be granted a bond of life worth 130% of her max HP when an opponent to which she herself applied directive to is defeated. Now, this isn't really that important, guys, because what this basically means is when Arlecchino actually defeats an opponent that has a Blood Debt Directive on them, so the level 1, alright, the mark won't go away. The mark will actually be absorbed by Arlecchino anyway, even if they die before she can absorb the mark, and it will be 130% of her bond of life. That's how it works, right? So yeah. And 5 seconds after a directive is applied, it will be upgraded into a Blood Debt Due, alright? When absorbed, it will instead grant Arlecchino 130% Bond of Life, alright? And the aforementioned waves cannot exceed the original limit on the values of Bond of Life through all his acts. So basically, it's what I said in the elemental skill earlier. What I didn't say, though, was that Arlecchino can actually just absorb Blood Debt Directives and Blood Debt Dues from opponents that she has killed, right? So if you've applied a Blood Debt Directive or Blood Debt Due to an opponent and they die before you can absorb the mark, that's not an issue, because now, with this passive unlocked, Arlecchino will just absorb the mark anyway, and there you go. So, yeah. Now, her second constellation, her second passive, I should say, her Ascension 4 passive, is actually quite important. Well, it's important, but it doesn't really do anything, if I'm going to be honest. But basically what this does is Arlecchino will gain 1% elemental resistance as well as physical resistance for every 100 attacks she has. Alright? Yeah. Or, sorry, for every 1,000 attacks she has. So, yeah. For every 100 attacks she has over 1,000, that's the way to say it. So, yeah. Now, the maximum that can be achieved in this method is 20%. So basically, guys, for every 100 attack that Arlecchino has over 1,000, she will gain 1% resistance to absolutely everything, basically. Well, except true damage, but true damage doesn't exist in the game just yet. Unless the wolves count as true damage, but I don't think so. I'm not sure, actually. But yeah, basically, Arlecchino just gets 20% resistance to absolutely everything, let's just say. Alright? Yeah. Now, I know what you're thinking. What does it mean by above 1,000 attack for every 100? Well, what that means, guys, is when you're above 1,000 attack and you start building attack on her, every 100 attack that she has over the number 1,000. So let's say your Arlecchino has 1,100 attack. That is 1% resistance to everything, effectively, right? Let's say you have 2,000. Now you're at 10%, okay? And if you're at the maximum, which is 3,000, that is 20%. And 3,000 is the maximum that Arlecchino can actually obtain this way, which seems like a decent passive, but I'm going to be honest, it really doesn't do much, right? Because especially in the way that the game is actually portrayed now, right, where a lot of enemies can and will deal a lot of damage to you, right? Especially bosses and units in Spiral Abyss and stuff like that. This passive really does not do much, okay? Yeah. So, it gets a lot better with her C2, though, this passive gets a lot better with her C2, but we'll talk more about that onto the Constellation section. So, yeah. And of course, there is also Arlecchino's Overworld passive, which is very, very unique, because this passive basically makes it so that when Arlecchino, when Arlecchino is in combat, she will gain 40% pyro damage bonus, but she cannot be healed by anyone other than her ultimate, which is why running healers on Arlecchino isn't really that great, guys, unless it's Bennett or someone else that can provide something other than just healing, right? So yeah, a lot of units like, you know, well, Chi-Chi's never really been meta, but let's just say Chi-Chi, right? She's not really that useful. Diona heals, but she also provides shielding and elemental mastery bonus, depending on her constellation level, right? To Arlecchino, so she could be useful there. Yeah, Bennett is also pretty useful. Kuki Shinobu can actually be decently useful with Arlecchino because she can wear Tenacity of the Millilith. So there's that. And also an Elemental Mastery build on her, but she's more used for Dendro teams, so not really, I guess. But it's still an option, is what I'm trying to say, guys. Right? So yeah, that's basically Arlecchino's entire kit, effectively broken down to you. Now, the next thing that most people do is go onto the weapon. So let's follow suit. Arlecchino has a weapon currently equipped on her, as you could probably tell from looking at the screen. But basically, guys, this is Arlecchino's signature weapon. It's called the Crimson Moon Semblance. Now, this weapon is actually pretty damn strong on her, but there's a pretty big issue. It's only strong on her. This is the only weapon this is the only polearm in the game that Arlecchino can really use. Like, no one else can really use it. No one wants to not be able to heal. I mean, Hu Tao, I guess. So, like, you could do that, but Hu Tao doesn't really benefit from not healing, right? Yes, it makes it so that, you know, you don't accidentally get over 58% HP, but, you know, if you want to use her burst to heal when you're low, yeah, you see what I mean? In fact, even the polearm arc on herself, Zhang Ling, I don't think she really has a use. I think this is the only weapon that Zhang Ling can't use. I'm going to be honest. So, yeah. But anyway, guys, what this weapon actually does is you gain a bond of life worth 25% of your max HP when your charged attack hits an opponent. Okay? So as soon as your charged attack hits an opponent, you gain 25% of your max HP as bond of life, which is why Arlecchino can actually gain 170% bond of life with this and her elemental skill, right? At least a maximum of, okay? Yeah. This effect can be triggered once every 14 seconds, and in addition to this, the equipping character, when the equipping character has a bond of life, they gain 12% damage bonus. If the value of bond of life is greater than or equal to 30% of max HP, then they gain an additional 24%. So if you guys didn't skip school and you actually do know your math, 12 plus 24 is 36. All right, that is a 36% damage bonus, right, to, obviously, well, your respective elements. So for Arlecchino, it would be Pyro. For Sino, it would be Electro. For Shenhe, it would be Cryo, so on and so forth, right? Yeah. Now, this is insane, because on top of the 40% Pyro damage bonus you're getting, you're also getting another 36% at R1. When you have more refinements, it obviously goes up, right? So, yeah, you can actually get a lot of damage bonus from this weapon, right? Yeah, which is why Arlecchino's artifact builds are actually kind of different, depending on which weapon you're running, and which team you're running, and which artifacts that you're running, and, you know, things like that. So, yeah. Now, Arlecchino does actually have some other options, mainly Staff of Homer. Staff of Homer is definitely her second best consistent option, right? Then there's also weapons like Sino's weapon, so Staff of the Scarlet Sands. That is also pretty good, but to be fair, Staff of the Scarlet Sands, guys, I will say, is only good in Vaporized teams. So if you're not running a Vaporized team, like you're running a Mono Pyro team, or a Double Pyro, Double Geo team, or, you know, Mono Pyro Swirl, basically, then it's not really that great. However, if you're running Melt or well, to be fair, Overload isn't really that good either with this weapon. So only Vaporize and Melt, or even Burgeon, I could say, would be kind of worth with that weapon, right? So yeah. But if you're running Mono Pyro, Double Pyro, Double Geo, Overload, I would honestly not recommend Staff of the Scarlet Sands. Yeah. Skyward Spine is pretty damn hilarious, I'm going to be honest. Don't do it. Yeah, that's not really that great. Calamity Queller isn't bad, to be fair, because it does provide Arlecchino a lot of attack, right? But of course, it's missing crit rate and crit damage, so it's not going to be her best, but it does give her a lot of raw damage, right? Yeah. Now, actually a pretty close second place option is actually the Primordial Jadewing Spear. For those of you that have been playing the game for a long time, since the beginning basically, and you have a decent amount of copies of that weapon, or even just one, Primordial Jadewing Spear is actually a very good weapon for Arlecchino, because it gives her a bunch of attack, it increases her damage dealt, and it also gives her crit rate, and, well, effectively the stats are the exact same as Crimson Moon Semblance. So 674 base attack, 22.1% crit rate, right? Yeah. It's pretty damn insane. In fact, it's probably her second best option. So if I was to give Arlecchino's weapon rankings, definitely this one as her best in slot, then it would be Primordial Jadewing Spear, and then it would be the Staff of Homa, right? Yeah. But Staff of Homa and Primordial Jadewing Spear are very close. Crimson Moon Semblance, it's in its own world. Yeah. Crimson Moon Semblance is it's about a 10% increase from her other 5-star options. And obviously, free-to-play weapons, well, you got not contain cross spear unless you're running a reaction team, but it doesn't give you any normal attack damage. Crescent Pike and Dragon Spine Spear, I regret refining this weapon. I want my polearm billet back. Yeah, but these two, obviously not, unless you're running physical Arlecchino, which I will shoot you if you are running physical Arlecchino. This weapon is not really that great either. Missive Wind Spear is actually pretty good if you are running a reaction team, like I said. Like Vaporize or, you know, Melt, they would actually quite like this weapon. It's not a bad option. Lithic Spear is good, but once again, it's kind of restrictive with your team, right? Because Arlecchino isn't actually Liu Weiyan, so you need 3 other Liu Weiyan characters in order for me to really say that this weapon is a pretty decent option. And Dragon's Bane is a pretty good option as well because, you know, increased damage dealt to opponents affected by Hydro or Pyro, so it's a really good Vaporize weapon. Or if you're like, you know, if you know about Arlecchino's pretty damn strong free-to-play option, it's this, the White Tassel, because it gives you, it doesn't give as high base attack, but the crit rate it gives is very nice, which it actually gives more crit rate than Crimson Moon Semblance and Primordial Jadewing Spear, so it does give you a bit more crit rate, actually. But the main thing is that it increases your normal attack damage by 24% at level 1. At level 5, it's 48%. The reason I don't have level 5 is because I actually got rid of all my White Tassels by upgrading them back in the day, so yeah, I don't have any White Tassels anymore, but that doesn't really affect me as much. So yeah, hopefully you guys saved your White Tassel copies, and you can R5 this weapon, and it's an insane weapon on Arlecchino, especially as a free-to-play option. In fact, this weapon probably does beat out some of Arlecchino's 4-star weapons as well, so yeah, it's nowhere near 5-star territory, but it's still a very good option to go for. So yeah, definitely, in my opinion, one of the best free-to-play options if you don't have anything else, right? Yeah. Of course, there are other weapons as well, like, what's it called? The Blackcliff Polearm, that is actually a pretty... where is it? There it is. The Blackcliff Pole is actually a pretty good option as well, because it gives crit damage and attack, and its passive is actually pretty nice, but it only really triggers against mobs, not really against duos or bosses, effectively. And then you have your Battle Pass weapon. Where is the Battle? That's not the Battle Pass. The Battle Pass, oh yeah, it's gone. It's gone, unfortunately, because this is... I am recording this during a pre-download patch on a Monday. So, yeah, kind of unfortunate, but it's not there. But the Battle Pass weapons are also a pretty nice option for Arlecchino if you want to go for those as well. So, yeah. Now, as for Arlecchino's artifacts... Haha, get it? Artifacts, you know, because her name's Arlecchino, and you put artifacts and Arlecchino together, and I'll go hang off the roof now. Anyway, guys, this is actually Car. Now, Venus has left. Car is here. So, basically, what I'm trying to say is, Fragment of Harmonic Whimsy do be her best in slot, because I say so. No, I'm joking. But what I'm trying to say, guys, is whenever Arlecchino has her Bond of Life increase or decrease, she will increase the damage that she deals by 18%, and it can stack up to 3 times. Now, that's insane because Arlecchino is going to she's going to be able to use these artifacts insanely well. I'm gonna probably commit a war crime if I say that again. Yeah, anyway, Arlecchino, whenever she uses these, I'm not gonna say, no. Alright, artifacts, I'm saying it properly. Alright, what I'm trying to say, guys, is she can use this artifact really, really well because she's constantly fluctuating her Bond of Life, increasing it, decreasing it, most of the time decreasing it, but she can trigger it so damn quickly to the point where this is obviously going to be up all the time. And 54% damage dealt increase is absolutely insane, right? In fact, this artifact set is actually her best in slot, but her second option is actually Gladiator's Finale, right? Gladiator's Finale is actually a very nice option as well, because if you're basically a Claymore polearm or sword user, your normal attack damage is increased by 35%. That's really damn strong, right? And these two are really the only sets that you really want to use. There are other options as well, but I'm not going to go over them in this video because, you know, this video is already 40 minutes long, and I don't really want to drag this on any longer. But basically, guys, your two options are basically her best in slot as well as her Gladiator's Finale, which is a lot easier to get as well because you probably will be farming a load of bosses during your time. So this will definitely, you'll probably have a very decent full set lying around. So, yeah. And of course, you can mix two pieces like Marechaussee Hunter with, you know, two-piece Havoc, Fragment of Harmonic Whimsy. This is not Wuthering Waves. Havoc doesn't exist here. Yeah, and you kind of know the drill, guys, right? So her best 4 sets is definitely Fragment of Harmonic Whimsy as well as, what's it called? Gladiator's Finale. So yeah, and now Arlecchino's Constellations. All right. Now, as you can see, I do have C3 Arlecchino. I had about 66,000 Primo Gems when Arlecchino's banner came out, so I was able to pull for a decent amount. So yeah, now Arlecchino C1 Constellation, insane. Honestly, if you have to choose between Arlecchino's polearm as well as her weapon, as well as her Constellation, easily. Like, it would not take me 3 seconds to say her Constellation because it's her Constellation. Number one, her weapon is just, you know, a lot weaker for your account simply because she's the only one that can use it. And number two, this is a much better quality of life increase as well as a damage increase. Because if you guys didn't know, Arlecchino C1 basically increases the damage multiplier of her Mask of Red Death by 100%. And that's not multiplying it by 100%. That's adding on. So at my level, 288%, right? That is 388% now. That's 388%, which means my normal attack scalings are going to be even higher. And on top of that, whenever Arlecchino does normal attacks with Mask of Red Death state, when her Pyro Infusion is there, my interruption resistance is now greatly increased, meaning there's only a few attacks in the game that can actually knock me away now. Yeah. So, instant comfort boost right there. This makes her so much more comfortable to play. If you can, definitely go for this Constellation over her weapon. But of course, at the end of the day, it's your account, you do what you wish. Now, her C2, very, very nice as well. Her C2 basically makes it so that now all of your level 1 Blood Debt directives are now immediately Blood Debt dues. Okay, which means you no longer have to play the 5-second rule game. You don't have to keep a mental counter in your head anymore. You just E, level 2, and you can charge attack straight away. Like, you just E charge attack, that's it, right? So that's really, really good, because now you can do your support rotation first, then go on to Arlecchino, and have the buffs exist for, you know, a much more manageable amount of time. The rotation is a lot simpler as well, because you don't need to go back and forth between Arlecchino. You just go supports first, then Arlecchino. It's a lot easier and a lot better to play. And on top of that, listen to this, alright? When Arlecchino does her charge attack against... when Arlecchino absorbs a Blood Debt directive, okay, this can be through her charge attack or through her burst, she will do a massive area of effect pyro damage called Bale Moon's Bloodfire, the most metal-sounding thing in the entire game, alright? Bale Moon's Bloodfire, it's called, and it will actually deal 900% of Arlecchino's attack, okay, as extra damage, right? So, let's say my attack is 3,000, which will be the maximum, okay? Wait a minute. I forgot something very, very important. I forgot to talk about our artifact stats. I'm probably going to do that after this constellation. So, yeah. But basically, guys, if I have 3,000 attack and I like multiply that by 9, that's 27,000 extra damage added on, basically, which is absolutely insane, right? Genuinely. Yeah. Like, if you have 3,000. If you have something more modest, like, let's say, 2,500, which is kind of what you want to really be aiming for. Well, if you have a 5-star weapon, if you have a 4-star weapon, or even the Black Tassel, you'd probably be around 2,000. So let's say 2,000 is the lowest, right? 2,000 multiplied by 9 is 18,000 extra damage. 18,000 extra damage is a lot. And that also gets increased by multipliers and, you know, crit damage as well if you do have high enough crit rate and things like that. So yeah, it does add up. That's the base damage. The baseline lowest they could possibly be. So yeah, it's pretty insane. And on top of that, guys, when Arlecchino absorbs a Bloodfire after this charged attack with the Bell Moon Bloodfire, right, her resistances are increased by 20%, again. And the best part is that this is just a flat 20%. There's no scaling or anything like that. The only drawback is you do have to have, you know, Arlecchino's Ascension 4 passive unlocked, but provided you do, you get this passive. So even, number 1, even more damage. Number 2, even more quality of life. And number 3, even more defensive capabilities. This is a 3-in-1 constellation right here, right? And of course, this AoE Pyro damage Bale Moon Bloodfire is once every 14 seconds, I believe? No, it's 10 seconds. Okay, yeah. Before we carry on, guys, I am going to actually go over her artifact stats. I'll probably put timestamps in the video so you will understand. There's no need for you to shout in the comments saying, you forgot, you... No, I'm joking. Yeah. But anyway, guys, your flower obviously has to be HP. If your flower isn't HP, your game is bugged. Tell Hoyoverse. Ask them to fix it. Number 2, attack. Your flower has to be attacked. If it's something else, your game is very, very rigged at this point. I would definitely ask a customer service to do something about your game, about your account, and probably about your life. I'm joking. Don't go that far. But, yeah. Anyway, guys, the next set is this, attack percent. Now, if you are running a Vaporize or Melt team, or even a Burgeon team, I can actually say Elemental, where is it? Elemental Mastery is actually, I love this piece, honestly, but it's a shame I'm not running a Vaporize or Melt team, so yeah, I can't use it. But what I'm trying to say, guys, is this piece is actually, Elemental Mastery is actually better when it comes to reaction teams. Now, of course, it is a bit of trade-off because you are losing attack, which not only is important for Arlecchino's personal damage, that doesn't really matter in a reaction team because Elemental Mastery will make up for that, but the resistance that you're going to be getting from her passive is going to be lower. So it really is a trade-off that you are taking. Do you want more reaction damage or more damage in your reaction team at the cost of less tankiness, right? It really does depend. Not that it's really going to make that much of a difference anyway, but that's basically it. So in all honesty, I would say run Elemental Mastery timepiece if you are going a Vaporize or a Melt team or even a Burgeon team, right? But if you're going Mono Pyro, double Geo, double Pyro, or, you know, Overload, attack is just a lot better. Or attack if you just don't know what to go, because it's a more consistent option. Now, as for her Goblet, this Goblet is also pretty questionable, because it really can depend, right? You can go Pyro damage bonus, but that, I will only really recommend going Pyro damage bonus if you're not getting any, you know, extra sources of pyro damage bonus anywhere else. Like, you're not running Crimson Witch of Flames, you don't have Arlecchino's signature weapon, you don't have Kazuha giving you a pyro damage bonus, you don't have Zhang Ling C6, you don't have Bennett C6, things like that, right? If you don't have enough pyro damage bonus on your team, or from external factors, like artifacts and things like that, then I would recommend running, you know, pyro damage bonus Goblet. However, if you are like me, like you have, you know, you have Arlecchino's signature weapon, you have a decent amount of sources that are giving you, you know, pyro damage bonus already, attack percent is better, simply because attack percent won't, you know, you won't be overcapping on pyro damage bonus, because the cap for pyro damage bonus, or any damage bonus, I believe, is 100%, right? Any more than that, and you will actually get diminishing returns. You'll still get an increase, but it just won't be worth it as much. Yeah. But at the end of the day, guys, once again, if you don't really know which one to go for, honestly, you can't really go wrong with attack, simply because attack is just gives you more defense from her passive, and it's also more universal, right? Yeah. I mean, as though you're really going to be doing physical damage with Arlecchino anyway. But what I'm trying to say is, attack percent, it's just better because, well, it's more consistent with her passive as well as her damage. So yeah. But at the end of the day, guys, it's really just really a substat thing, right? It's like a 1 or 2% difference. You're not really going to feel it, right? Yeah. So, yeah. But if you are unsure, you know, just go with attack percent because it's the safest bet, right? Yeah. Now, normally I wouldn't recommend going attack percent for any other character, but because Arlecchino has a passive that kind of requires you to have attack percent, you go for attack percent, right? So, yeah. But at the end of the day, it really is just a substat difference. Whichever artifact you have that has a better substat, just choose that one, right? Yeah. And as for her helmet, it's either crit rate or crit damage. Now, I'm running a crit rate helmet because I have a lot of crit damage substats, right? A lot of them. So even though I am running a crit rate weapon, I am running a crit rate helmet simply because I just have a lot of crit damage, right? Yeah, so it really depends on your ratio, guys. If you need more crit rate, go for crit rate. If you need more crit damage, go for crit damage. It's simple as that, but don't go attack percent, because at that point that's just a bit too much, right? Yeah. Now, Constellation 3, carrying on. Constellation 3 is very simple. This increases Arlecchino's normal attack scaling. Not just her Mask of Red Death, everything. Her normal attack, her plunging attack, her charge attack, Mask of Red Death, low plunge, high plunge, everything else, basically. So, yeah. Now, Arlecchino C4 is arguably her worst constellation, but that doesn't mean it's bad. It just means it's not as good as the others. What this basically does is, whenever Arlecchino absorbs a Blood Debt Directive, right, her ultimate, Bill Moon's Rising, the second most metal name in the game, probably, Bill Moon's Rising will actually have a decreased cooldown, well, by 2 seconds, and it will also restore 15 energy. Now, this does open up an option for another artifact set, but I'll talk that more in the artifacts dedicated video for Arlecchino. So, basically, guys, if Arlecchino's burst is at, like, you know, 13 seconds and you absorb a Blood Debt Directive, her burst will go down to 11 seconds now and you'll gain 15 energy. So this isn't just through Arlecchino's elemental skill, or sorry, her charge attack or her, you know, burst. It includes both of them, right? So if you absorb a Blood Debt Directive, like however that may be, through a character dying with your, through an enemy dying with your passive, through your charged attack, or through your burst, as long as you absorb a Blood Debt due, you basically just get this passive. You will reduce the cooldown of your burst by 2 seconds and also increase the energy, which is really nice, actually, for teams that aren't running a shielding unit, right? If you're not running a shielding unit, then, you know, yeah. This is a very, very nice passive, right? Yeah. As for C5, it's nothing that special. It increases Arlecchino's burst scaling, right, by 3 levels. So my burst at talent level 10 is 666%. I'm pretty sure that's intentional, actually. And as for level 13, I believe the scaling goes up to 780%, which is ridiculous. Everything else stays the same, though. But yeah, it does have a pretty big jump, and her C6 is pretty damn strong. So if you guys didn't know, Arlecchino's burst does damage, right? But only through the damage multiplier. However, now, Arlecchino's burst, okay, will actually also, on top of the damage multiplier scaling that she has, will also scale off of 700% of Arlecchino's current bond of life, right? And also Arlecchino's attack. Yeah. So it basically has 3 different scalings now. Her damage multiplier from her burst, her current bond of life, and her current attack as well. Yeah. So it is absolutely insane. Her burst, this is basically why Arlecchino C6 can actually hit for a few million when it comes to her burst. You've probably seen, you know, DPS showcases and one-shot showcases of Arlecchino where her burst does, like, you know, 2 or 3 million, maybe even 5 million damage, right? I've even seen a burst on Arlecchino do 9 million damage, right? Yeah. But this is where all of that power is coming from. This burst is absolutely, this C6 is absolutely insane for her burst damage. But not only that, this burst, or C6 I should say, also will do another thing, okay? After Arlecchino uses, what is it? What's it called? Yeah, after Arlecchino uses her elemental skill, okay, her normal attacks as well as burst will gain 10% increased crit rate and 70% increased damage. Yeah, 70% increased crit damage. So your normal attacks, effectively, if you have like 200% crit damage normally, now your normal attacks will have effectively 270% crit damage. Yeah. Now, of course, the drawback is that this only does, you know, work with Arlecchino's normal attacks and her burst. So not her elemental skill or her charged or plunging attack, only her normals and burst. That is it. Which is a bit of a shame, because if it applied to everything, that would be ridiculous. But I guess you kind of do need... What balancing act do you even need at this point, right? Like, you may as well go all the way, but heyo, unfortunately, Hoyoverse is Hoyoverse. So, yeah. And the crazy thing about this, guys, is that you can actually have this up 100% of the time. Yeah. Because this, you know, this, thing this buff actually lasts for 20 seconds, but you can refresh it every 15 seconds. And if you remember when I said about Arlecchino's elemental skill, the cooldown being reduced by 0.8 seconds, if you play Arlecchino right, which most of the time you will be able to because you're just spamming normal attacks, you can actually get her cooldown lowered to basically 15 seconds, right? So instead of waiting full 30 seconds, you only have to wait 15 seconds before using elemental skill. So you can keep this up 100% of the time, and that's what makes it really, really insane, all right? So yeah, that has basically been Arlecchino's kit, guys. Now, moving on to Arlecchino's teams. Well, her teams are pretty straightforward, I'm going to be honest. Just, well, effectively, if you want to run, a vaporized team, right? If you want to run a vaporized team, you can either have a single hydro unit or a double hydro unit, like this team right here. Candace does synergize quite well with Arlecchino, but only at C6, and I'll get more onto that specifics in the team guide video, which I probably will be doing at some point as well. So, yeah. This Overload team is also really good, but Overload is only good if you have Chevreuse. If you don't have Chevreuse, it's not worth it. Yeah. Now, this is the main team I'm running, with Arlecchino, Bennett, Zhongli, Yunjin. Alright, this team works really, really well because Bennett and Yunjin are providing direct buffs to Arlecchino in the forms of attack from Bennett and Yunjin through her normal attack buff with her burst. Zhongli is wearing Tenacity of the Millilith, as well as his shield giving Resistance Shred. And I also have the Geo-Resonance as well, because the Geo-Resonance increases all damage dealt by 15% when you have a shield on you. And this includes the Crystallize shield. Not that Zhongli's shield is ever going to break, to be honest. So, yeah. Then there is this weird, quirky team, but, you know, it's more of a weird, quirky team. And then there's also Mono Pyro, right? With, you know, you can either go with Sucrose or you can go with Kazuha, right? Either or, it doesn't really... Well, it does kind of matter, but Sucrose's rotation's a bit more strict because if you're running Tales of the Dragon Slayers, which you probably will be, you need to use Arlecchino after Sucrose in order to get the attack buff. With Kazuha, you can do things like Double Swirl, which is why he's better for buffing vaporized damage dealers, so Arlecchino and Xingqiu's direct damage, but Sucrose is better in reaction-based teams, so Arlecchino Vaporize and Arlecchino Melt, rather than Kazuha, right? But because Kazuha does do better in mono teams, right? Simply because there's no reactions and he can just buff the damage, the elemental damage of those units, right? Yeah. But it really does depend, guys, honestly. Yeah. So you can really go a multitude of different teams, and I've already talked about them a lot during the video. So I'm not really going to repeat myself and go over them. There will be a separate team guide coming out at some point in the future. But anyway, guys, that's basically been the video. It's been basically an hour. I mean, it says 58 minutes on my recording thing here. So, yeah, I didn't really want this to be long, but I really did want to explain this more in detail, because there aren't really a load of videos out there about Arlecchino's kit going into detail and the other intricacies about Arlecchino's kit. Some people just gloss over some of that information, right? So, yeah, I really wanted to just go more in depth with Arlecchino's kit, so hopefully the long duration doesn't annoy you. But if it does, then there are timestamps below, so you can slide to different sections of the video. So yeah. But anyway, guys, I have been Carvenus14, and still am. And, stand up. There we go. She looks annoyed. Don't look at me like that. Yeah. But, you know, what's it called? Yeah. So do stay tuned, because those videos that I talked about, right, like going more in depth into different parts of Arlecchino's kit, like her teams, her artifacts,
Staring
and
into
stuff
my
like
eyes
that,
is
they
ill-advised.
will
I can't
definitely
promise you'll like
be
what
coming
you
out,
see.
and we'll go more into detail about some silly builds that you guys could probably do. So yeah, but anyway, guys, I have been Carvinus14 and still am, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day. I will see you all very, very soon. Oh, she's gonna turn. There we go. Goodbye.